What's up, everyone? How's it going? Basil, the White Dragon Masters here. An interesting review I have today on UFC 183. Silva, or Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. All right, so like I always say, guys, I'm going to talk about the last few fights, and I might throw in a couple of more reviews for the interesting stuff that I saw in the prelims and stuff. So let's sit back and enjoy the reviews. Okay, so I will definitely talk about one prelim, which I normally don't do, but that prelim was very important for the women's weight division. And that fight was between Miesha Tate and Sarah McMahon. I actually thought that Sarah McMahon, in my mind, was going to be the winner, but to my surprise, Miesha Tate really did a brilliant comeback. She was losing the first round, clearly. It was the second and the third round where she just came back and she controlled Sarah McMahon the entire fight. I mean, it was almost like Sarah McMahon didn't want to be in there. I mean, she was fighting aggressively, but Miesha was just on top of her the entire time. Round three, obviously, it was all Miesha Tate. So Miesha Tate won a decision, and she tried a couple of submissions, but they didn't work, unfortunately for her. But she had a brilliant comeback. I was very impressed with her. I really was. Do I really want to see her fight Ronda Rousey again? No. I mean, I think I've seen 2 fights with her. I really don't think that I really want to see Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate 3, honestly, even though I like Miesha Tate. And then, you know, along the way, there was the main event started, and a very interesting fight happened there. That was a Tim Boetsch versus a Talis Latis. And I was literally looking through Talis Latis. I thought he was a joke. He wasn't going to win. And to my surprise, he finished Tim Boetsch, and he submitted him with his arm choke, which is interesting because Tim Boetsch is a very tough fighter. We all know that. He's one of those guys that if he lands a shot on you, he'll knock you out and stuff. And that's what I thought. I thought Tim Boetsch was going to win. But he lost, and he lost not by decision, but by submission. And surprisingly, Talis Latis took it to him as far as standing up was concerned. So that was impressive. All right, guys. So moving on to the main last 3 fights of UFC 183. Before I even get into that, let me... I wasn't too thrilled about this fight. I wasn't too thrilled about any of these fights, to be honest with you, including the main event. Just because I had a certain prediction. Again, for those of you who don't know me or are not on my channel, I am also a martial artist, and I'm also a fighter, and I've also have a intuition and a prediction. And my prediction was pretty dead-on accurate on pretty much all of the fights. So let's start off with the third last fight. Al Iaquinta versus Joe Lauzon. You know, in the beginning, this was the first round was a close fight. The first round, a lot of back and forth was going on the first round. And then Al Iaquinta, I believe it was, according to my notes that I see here, he picked Joe apart, you know. And after he hurt Joe, Joe is pretty much done. And in fact, what's amazing about Joe Lauzon is his heart. Al Iaquinta probably punched him numerous times. I can't even count how many times he hit him. He hit him once in the gut, and then he just went off, and he was all wobbly. Like, Joe Lauzon was all over the place. I thought he was going to be done. I'm surprised that it went on that long. It's amazing the type of heart Joe Lauzon had, but Joe Lauzon clearly lost. He got his ass kicked. I mean, he really did. Al Iaquinta beat him fair and square. So that was it was a good fight. I enjoyed watching that one. Let's go to the co-main event. Kelvin Gastelum versus Tyron Woodley. My prediction was Tyron Woodley definitely was going to beat this kid, because I mean, Al Iaquinta is only 23 years old, and Woodley is a 32-year-old strong power horse. I mean, so is Kelvin Gastelum, power horse, but it's just the 10-year age difference in which Woodley is just, really in his prime. And I just thought that Woodley was going to win this fight. I thought that, Kelvin was a little not mature enough to fight him at this stage. But surprisingly, Kelvin took it to him. It was an interesting fight. It wasn't an easy fight for Woodley at all. It wasn't easy at all. This shows Kelvin Gastelum is a tough kid. He came from the Ultimate Fighter show, and I followed his career since the Ultimate Fighter show. I think a couple of years ago he was a nobody, and today he's one of the top 10. I think he's number 7, or I can't remember, 7 or 8 or what, but he's somewhere in the top 10. This is for sure was something that Woodley was going to win. Well, first round, first two rounds were won by Woodley. Woodley clearly scored counter punches to Kelvin Gastelum right in the face. It's amazing that he didn't knock him out. It was surprising that he didn't knock him out because he hits really, really hard. But Kelvin duked it out like a tough kid that he is. I think third round, was what really impressed me about Kelvin Gastelum. Because no one's done that to Tyrone Woodley. At least, not even Carlos Condit did that to him. Third round, Kelvin came in and he put pressure on Woodley. You could see Woodley gasping for air. And I know he wasn't comfortable. No matter how hard he tried to show afterwards that he was having fun, he wasn't having fun. Certainly, you never have fun in a fight. You just don't have fun. You're fighting. It's a fight. It's fists and kicks and elbows and knees and submissions at your face. All right. So it was great fight. That was a good fight. Back and forth. Clearly, Tyrone won, scored more, hurt more, but Kelvin showed that he's more than capable of being in there with somebody like that. But Tyrone Woodley won. I believe it was a split decision, and it was a fair split decision. Let's go to the main event: Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. Anderson Silva's first fight back in, I believe, a year and a half or a year, obviously from that severe injury that he broke his tibia bone in half. And ironically, as I'm also a fighter, and I broke my leg, if you can see right here, the scar, I broke my leg in 2011. And right over here, I had two rods, 2 screws, and 10 screws. So 2 plates and 12 screws in total in my leg, and I had 2 leg surgeries. Luckily, it wasn't from fighting. It was in a horrendous accident. But it took a lot out of me. I can relate to Anderson Silva to a good degree because I'm, like I said, I'm an athlete myself, I'm a fighter myself. I know how hard it is to come back. And it's a real mental challenge and game. So I really sympathized with him. I did sympathize with Anderson Silva because he broke his leg too. And it takes a lot. You go under depression, you put on a lot of weight. But he was busy, he went to physical therapy, he remarkably came back really, really quickly. So that was very impressive. And honestly, before I even talk about Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz, the main event, my prediction was exactly what happened. Nick Diaz, to me, is a walking punching bag. And I knew that Anderson Silva was not going to knock him out. I knew Anderson Silva was not going to submit him. I knew months ago that Silva was going to win just by scoring. Number one, because Anderson Silva was mentally, he needs to get this first fight out of his system after a strong, after such a humiliating defeat that he got knocked out by Chris Weidman, and then he broke his leg from the same guy. The same guy broke his leg. You obviously want to come back. And this was a truly, truly humbling experience for Anderson Silva. You can see that in his behavior. He wasn't cocky like he usually is. He wasn't talking. He wasn't dancing around, showboating, or any of that stuff. And for that reason, I started to develop a little bit more respect for Anderson Silva after today. And so he came back, and obviously he couldn't, I knew that he wasn't going to go out there to finish the fight. I knew that this was going to be a chess game, a fencing game of who was going to strike better, who was going to score more. And so let's get into the fight. Okay, the results are exactly what I predicted. So round one, dead even. I mean, it was hard to really score. Round two. Round two, Silva, I believe, kicked Nick Diaz a few times, I think twice, in the stomach. I think round one he kicked, round two kicked him once, round three kicked him once. And don't get me wrong, Nick Diaz hit him too. Nick Diaz punched him over the head and gave his little boxing. But it was funny because for the first time I saw Nick Diaz do, I mean, he was being Nick Diaz, he was doing exactly what he does, but doing it to somebody like Anderson Silva, which was just laughing, smiling, being silly, lying down on the ground, like just doing weird stuff, right? It was hilarious. I mean, that's why UFC is so amazing, and that's why I love this sport. And I'm so passionate about martial arts and stuff. You just don't get to see this stuff anywhere else. And it was amazing. You know, it was for the first time I saw Silva being on the opposite side. Because that's what Silva does to people. That's what he does. He likes to dance around, taunt people, make them feel uncomfortable. Well, it sort of happened, you know, what it sort of happened to him. It felt a little bit strange. And, you know, coming from a guy like Diaz, it was even weirder. And it happened. So, you know, he did a great job as far as Anderson Silva. Did a great job. Nick Diaz, like I said, was a walking punching bag. He's walking in. He's doing all this come on shit, right? But at the end of the day, he was not doing anything. Silva was constantly scoring on Diaz. I mean, there was a point, I think it was in the third round, where Diaz got busted with his left eye, and you could see like this, you know, you could see some cosmetic changes in his face with the blood and all that. And obviously Silva was just, you know, doing his techniques. Obviously he wasn't really finishing. He wasn't doing anything to finish him. He tried, but you could clearly see that he was scoring. Diaz, like an idiot, was literally, I mean, he was walking. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Diaz fight that he had with Carlos Condit, in which he was walking and he was constantly complaining that, he was throwing these little baby kicks on me. But of course, I mean, if you're not going to do anything, if you're just going to stand there, like he was standing there and his punches were coming like this and his kicks were coming like this, and it was just funny. There was no power behind it. And I kind of thought that that if he wanted to, he could have really won this fight. He just needed to be a little bit more aggressive and a bit more crisper. He's fighting Anderson Silva, which is a good stand-up fighter, but there was too much time wastage. I mean, it's like too much showboating, wasting around, standing. I don't know what he was doing. It was a weird fight, but he scored. I don't know. How can I say this? Silva clearly scored. He clearly scored, and he was hitting him more. His shots were crispier. They were cleaner. There were kicks that were coming, and his moves were. Nick Diaz's moves were a little bit sluggish. What really surprised me though was that if Diaz is a jiu-jitsu expert in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, how come he didn't try to take Silva down at all? Like, why wouldn't he do that? He did that one time. That one, and it was a sloppy takedown. It wasn't even a shoot. It was just like he went down. Silva, it was totally telegraphed. He sprawls, comes back up. That was the only time I saw him do it. That's it. Period. The entire time I saw this. I was looking at this fight and I was like, man, Diaz, I don't know if you realize, but you're losing this fight because this guy's scoring on you. All right, you may have hit him a few times with your boxing here and there, but this guy's clearly scoring. Silva's clearly scoring. And if you need to win this fight, you better turn it up a little bit more. And by turning it up doesn't mean turning your attitude up. Turning it up means you need to be more active. You got to hit. You got to strike more. It just looked like you had a guy who was just walking forward. And for some strange reason, I feel like he's cuckoo. I feel like Diaz is a little cuckoo. For some strange reason, he feels entitled that he won. I mean, he clearly lost a decision. It was a unanimous decision. I looked at this fight, top to bottom. I can see the first round was hard to score. Then I saw that Silva was scoring. Silva was doing his best. He was doing those JKD, which is Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's style of Kung Fu, in which you do the stomping kicks on the kneecap. It's used a lot in Kung Fu. It's used a lot in Karate. And Silva does that a lot. He does JKD techniques or Jeet Kune Do techniques, and yeah, I mean, you know, he was doing those, and you know, Diaz was popping. I mean, it's just, I don't know. The fight was weird. I kind of figured that it was a right decision. I knew this is exactly what I predicted, and this is exactly what happened. It was a walking punching bag who got hit by Silva a few times, decision, and Anderson Silva won by decision. He was very, very emotional. He cried his ass off, and you know, it was very surreal to see him like that. It really was. I kind of can relate to it, guys. I can relate to it because when I broke my leg, I was very scared that I was not going to be able to train martial arts again, which is my passion, which honestly makes who I am today. I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. And I was very emotional when that happened to me. I was scared that I was never going to be able to do that. So I can totally imagine the anxiety that this guy must have gone through to come back and fight, and you know, to be where he was and all that. So he was weeping, sobbing like a little baby, and I felt really, I clapped for him, even though I didn't like Anderson Silva very much for the same reasons that I don't like John Jones, or wasn't a big fan of John Jones. He's a great fighter, but I'm not a big fan of his. I just felt very happy for him. I'm glad he's back, and you know, thank God this leg incident made him humble, and he's humbled a lot. And I hope he stays that way. I hope he keeps that martial spirit up. I hope he stays this way. And I hope he comes back, and honestly, I'll cheer for him now. You know, he's cool. I like that. I like when people are like that. I love people like Anthony Johnson. I love people like Fedor Emelianenko. I love people like George St. Pierre, Mirko Cro Cop. I love humble fighters. Humility is everything in martial arts. Otherwise, what separates you from being a thug or a fighter, being a martial artist? You got to remember that difference. A martial artist and a fighter are two different things. Anybody can be a fighter, but a martial artist is an attitude, it's a behavior, it's a it's a way of life. And so, yeah, hats off to Silva. I'm glad he's back. Yeah, the next UFC, it sucks. I was upset that my boy Chris Weidman is injured. I was really looking forward to that fight. The next UFC, I believe, is UFC 184. Which was supposed to be Weidman versus Vitor Belfort. I really wanted to see that fight. That was a fight that I really was looking forward to, but he's hurt. Obviously now, I think I read somewhere that they canceled that fight. I hope they don't cancel it. I hope they bring a replacement. And it'll be interesting now that Silva won this fight. Maybe it'll be Silva versus, what's his name? Weidman 2? Not Weidman, excuse me. Silva versus Vitor Belfort 2. I'm sure Vitor Belfort would want that fight the way he got knocked out by Anderson Silva's front kick, right? So they might do that, and or another thing they might do is maybe this is just my opinion, my assumption, they might have Lyoto Machida take on Vitor Belfort. Who knows? Who knows? Or they might just scratch the whole fight altogether if nobody's there. But yeah, Kat Zingano versus Ronda Rousey. I'm looking forward to that fight. I have a feeling that Kat Zingano is one of those type of women that if they hit you, you go down. So that'll be interesting. Let's see how that comes out. But guys, yeah, that's pretty much the review for UFC 183. All together a weird card, strange card. And guys, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have a lot of interesting other things in there. My martial art videos are in there. Some of my martial art short films are in there. Movie reviews are in there. All sorts of interesting stuff is in there. And so, you know, please, if you enjoyed this, subscribe. And again, guys, understand that this is just the White Dragon's opinion. This is just my opinion. You have a right to disagree with me altogether on whatever you say. You have a right to disagree, absolutely. But what you don't have is a right to disrespect me for my opinion. So comment, say whatever you like, but just be respectful. I respect your opinion. You respect mine. It's just an opinion, guys. You don't have to love it. All right, guys. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this. Basil the White Dragon Masters, out. Hiya! Oh, by the way, guys, I completely forgot to mention that for all my subscribers, I am going to be coming out with a series of cool videos that I took up in Seattle, Washington. I'm from Los Angeles, California, but I went and I visited my one of my oldest senseis from Shorin-ryu, Seibukan Karate, even though I'm a complete mixed martial artist now and I have black belts in several different styles, but I keep myself grounded with my sensei. And so I went to Seattle, Washington, where one of my senior masters, who I've been under training under for the last 20 years as well, we had a training camp, and I was part of that training camp, a grueling training camp. I just got back yesterday. So I'm going to be uploading a series of videos. You guys will have exposure to one of the styles. I also went, and it was an honor and a complete privilege to go to Sifu Bruce Lee, to go to his grave. I was there. I did an interesting video at his gravesite. So stay tuned for that. That's something I did when I was in Seattle, Washington. In fact, I do that every time I go for a training camp in Seattle, Washington, when I'm not doing MMA, when I'm doing karate. So I went to see Sifu Bruce Lee's grave. So stay tuned for that. And I also went and I checked out something called Deception Pass, which is supposed to be a gorgeous, beautiful, mesmerizing, godly sight. So anyway, guys, just wanted to throw that in there. Basil the White Dragon Masters out. Hiya!